Morning, read the biodata. Roll number 26. Roll number 26. Roll number 3, Sindhe ma'am.
Yes,
Hello.
Sir, biodata.
Yes, sir. Roll number 2. Sir, biodata अजून भेटलेलं नाही मॉर्निंग
Biodata group मध्ये आहे, WhatsApp
टाकलाय
check
बघा
करा.
तुम्हाला.
आता टाकलेला आहे का?
Yes, check करा.
हो.
जस्ट
नाही तर मॅम तुम्ही करताय तर तुम्ही करा.
जस्ट वेट सर.
ये मेंबर्स का नाम है क्या? नहीं, फिल कर देता
टाइम टेबल.
शुरू कब करना है?
आप बायोडेटा करें. स्क्रीनशॉट. रोल नंबर 3.
रोल नंबर 6 तुम्ही रेडी आहात की मी रीड करू?
नाही मॅम, ठीक आहे, मी रीड करतो. यस सर,
रोल
मी
नंबर
रीड
26
करतो.
पे रीड करा.
ओके सर, ओके. Hello. Good morning, all of you. Myself, Rahul Ramesh Dalshe, and my roll number is 26. Today, I am here to introduce today's resource person for this morning session. First of all, I would like to thank. Dr. Satish Patil sir, Director HRDC, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, Deputy Director Dr. Rafi sir, Gaurav sir, for giving me this opportunity to introduce today's resource person. So, for the today's resource person, name is Dr.R.E.Martin G. Martin. Sir is surviving as Professor, Department of Zoology, Dr. Baba Sahib Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad. Sir is also served as Professor at Ahmednagar College, Ahmednagar from 1995 to 2008, and at KTHM College, Nashik from 1990 to 1995. Sir is a recipient of Srimati Tarabai Karandikar Prize, that is gold medal in MSc from University of Pune in 1987. Sir also received his PhD in 1990 from Marathwada University, Aurangabad. Since then, Sir is involved in teaching and research and has 30 years of postgraduate teaching experience. Sir has successfully guided 9 students for their PhD. Sir is life member of various scientific societies. Sir is also the fellow of Zoological Society of India and National Environmentalist Association. Sir has completed 3 major research projects funded by UGC and DST. Sir has organized 3 national conference and 1 international conference. Sir has published about 50 research paper in peer-reviewed national and international journals. Sir has been cited in many prestigious journals. Sir has attended, chaired, presented research paper in more than 90 national and international conferences in India and abroad. Sir has delivered numerous invited talks in national and international conferences and also Indian science congresses. Sir has 1 patent published. Has served as Sir also has served as academic coordinator, dean, director UGC HRDC, coordinator for PET 2016. Sir is also member of BCUD and on various bodies of university. Sir is a chairman of board of study in zoology and a member of research and academics council member. With this brief introduction, I would like to warm welcome Dr. Professor Martin sir, and I request to sir, please deliver his talk. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. for my introduction. I'll be speaking on carbon footprinting and mitigation. As we all know that the carbon amount that is available in the environment, this is really disastrous for us and for our future generation. How do we control it? And does our development phenomena that is taking place is actually responsible for increasing the carbon level in the environment in which we are staying? If we have to look into it, we'll find that the if you see this diagram, you find that we have got 1 foot. That means this is 1 foot that we have, and this footprint that we have has a global human population. Now, suppose if we have a global population is increasing, if all had an average of US lifestyle, then our foot will be very, very big, indicating that the footprint at the global level is very high compared to any other nation that you are taking. It is a developmental criteria which is associated with the carbon footprinting. Now, what is the carbon footprint? It is the amount of greenhouse gases that is primarily the carbon dioxide. They are released into the atmosphere by a particular human activity. So the worth to mention, a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, they are released into the atmosphere by a particular human activity. So the emphasis here is laid on a human activity. It is also a broad measure or be applied to the action of an individual, a family, an event, an organization, or even an entire nation. So it is measured. So if how much is the pollution or how much is the carbon that has been utilized by us, by us, by the individual, how much is the energy that will be consumed as a family, or even in some kind of an event, or in an organization, or how much of the country's involvement is there in the formation of carbon release in the environment. Now, you know that a very common buzzwords which is now increasingly being used is a climate change. And we all know that most of the world leaders have been they are keeping a huge amount of budget in order to restrict what we call as the climate change or reversal of the climate change. And when they are doing it, just a minute. Hello. हाँ बोले सर. तो मैं डिपार्टमेंट में एचआरडी से मेरा लेक्चर चालू है सर. हाँ लेक्चर तो 2 बजे खत्म होगा सर. हाँ हाँ हाँ. तो वीसी सर के पास कब मिलना है? ठीक है सर. ठीक है. ओके थैंक यू. ओके. Sorry, there was a call from my chancellor's office. So apologies for that. Now, interestingly, when we talk about the climate change is increasingly being recognized as a major challenge, and it is widely accepted that the greenhouse gas emission is one of the major negative impact on the environment. Now, in our schools and in our universities, we have been studying that how this climate change is affecting whole of the system. And we have been in environmental sciences, we have almost studied how the climate change is occurring also. It is a buzzword now. Okay. After Bill Clinton becoming the president, then we are also US started to fund lot of funding for climate change. Now let us see whether climate change is there or not. That is a different issue. And we will see in the later slides how the climate change, which is a big challenge for us, and how does the geological scene of the earth answers this particular problem. The total set of greenhouse gas emissions that is caused directly and indirectly by an individual. So the total set of greenhouse gas emissions, they are being caused directly or indirectly by individual, organization, event or product is commonly called their carbon footprint. Now the same thing I am talking about, I will be coming in more detailed aspects of how the individual's organization, event or product in a commonly called their carbon are involved in what is called a footprint. Now, in order to establish a footprint of organization, the first step is to reduce the emission if caused. So what is the emission primarily? Primarily the emission is that we have to restrict the emission of CO2, that is the carbon dioxide. So the carbon footprint is also commonly used to describe the total amount of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions for which an individual or organization is responsible. Footprint can also be calculated for events or products. Okay. So the carbon footprint is commonly used to describe total amount of carbon dioxide that is released in the greenhouse gases. We know what are the different types of greenhouse gases, and the share of greenhouse gases are responsible for increasing the temperature, global warming, that we know. But we are putting it into another way. How is the carbon? So that we and how can that can be calculated from the event or from the products. So when we talk about how to calculate how do we calculate the carbon dioxide? The calculating an organization's footprint is important, and where the full range of emission sources are possible in order to provide a complete picture of organization's impact. Okay. Now, for example, we are sitting in house. What you're doing in a house, you are early morning when you get up, you start the gas, you make tea. Then what you do? You brush, you are using water. Then you have a food. Then you all go to the college by vehicle, four-wheeler or two-wheeler, whatever it is. You take the shortest distance to save your petrol or fuel. And then after reaching the college, you take your lectures. Maybe the AC will be on, or laboratory, the AC will be on, light consumption is on. These all things, you are converting the whole action, what you are doing it, from the gas to the monetary. So how much is the 1 hour gas burning? How much is the cost of the gas? How much is the fuel cost in case of rupees? So for that one person, so how much it is coming for one person? That all is calculated in the form of a carbon footprint. So greenhouse gas emission, they are classified into three main types. One, the direct emission that result from activities, the organization control, where the combustion of fuel which produce CO2 emissions, for example, the gas used to provide hot water for the workplace. So how much is this CO2 emitted, combustion of fuel, which produce CO2 emission? For example, the gas, that's how I told you, when you get up, you are boiling water for the tea, for bathing, and all that thing. Then emission from the use of electricity. How much the electricity is consumed? Electricity for lighting and equipment. Although the organization is not directly involved in control of this emission, by purchasing electricity, it is indirectly responsible for reducing CO2. So you know that for every month you get an electricity bill. So that CO2 amount, the money that you're paying for the electricity bill is actually taken indirectly or directly as a CO2 release amount. Another one is the indirect emission from product and services. Now, each product or service that is purchased by an organization is responsible for emission. So the way the organization uses product and services affect its carbon footprint. So each product or service that is purchased by an organization is responsible for the emission. Okay. So this is the source that will be taken from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development and World Resources Institute. What is the challenge that we have? We know that when the system fails, we have certain remedies, and the remedy is either to correct the system or replace the system. But in a natural condition, these things does not work. When such thing does not work, then the challenge is directly involved with the human, and therefore the challenge is the summarize the human. The challenge is the population issues. The population issues also include the population size and the level of the consumption. What is the level of consumption of CO2 by us? Now let us see how the population rose from 1600 from the year 1600, 16th century. 16, 17, 18, 19, by 2000, the population has gone to almost equivalent to 6 billion. So thousands of years to reach 1 billion it took. Then it took about 130 years to reach 2 billion. Then it took only 15 years to reach 4 billion. And it took about 12 years to reach 5 billion. And 12 years to reach 6 billion. So thus you find that in the shortened period, there is almost 1 billion increase in the population has been seen, indicating that we have an exponential increase in the population, and this population exponential increase is actually putting a load on our developmental things, and we need to have a developmental assets. Therefore, we are indirectly or directly depending upon the energy resources that is available. Now, what this energy resources that we have is, and this energy resources that we have is actually used is calculated in way of how much money we are spending it in our electricity or for the fuel, whatever that we are getting it from the natural sources. Now you just look into the sciences that are involved with the environmental sciences, because this being a broad science of the environmental sciences, and environmental sciences is an amalgam of different branches of different sciences. For example, if you take the left side of the graph that you find environmental science, you have an environmental ethics, which is now developing as one of the finest science of it. Then you also have the field of ecology, which studies about the interrelationship between the animal and other plant and animal, everything. Then you have a biology, which includes plant science as well as the animal science, chemistry, atmospheric science, then oceanography. You know that the environment within the ocean is completely different than what we find in case of land animals. Okay. Then you have geology. Geology is a science of earth crust. Then you have archaeology, you have anthropology, you have sociology, history, political science, engineering, and economics. So the amalgam, the complexity that you find within this field of environmental sciences have raised a lot of questions. For example, if you look into the engineering sciences, engineering people are going to calculate their role through a mathematical simulation of modeling. Economic people will be discussing about suppose you have a typical village lots of trees and agricultural place. And in the name of development, if you want to remove these green patch and trees and make a 4-lane road, how many trees are being cut? So trees are cut. So the supply of oxygen is nowhere available. On a 4-lane road, how much is the traffic that will be plying on it? If you consider that one day 1,000 cars are plying, how much of the fuel will be used in that road per day? And if you convert that into cash money, how much is the money that we utilize for it? And therefore, indirectly you are calculating how much is the carbon footprint that is used in this particular thing. So that is the role of economic. Unfortunately, what happens, you must have observed, during the road widening and during the developmental phases, how much the trees that have been cut, there is no accountability of the trees that has been cut. One tree, if you take it in the cost wise, it costs some 3,765 rupees, one tree. This is the estimate which was given in the Indian Science Congress of 1974. So this data is 1974 data. So what would be the value of rupee if you extrapolate it to today's rupee value from 3,765 to today's amount? If you see, we find it will be in lakhs. So cost of one tree is in lakhs. So thousands of trees have been cut in the name of development. So that is having a negative effect in our environment. This, whether it is a good or bad, is always discussed in the form of what we call ethics. Ecologically, when the trees are out, most of the animals are disturbed. Those animals have to go from one place to another place. You are not able to study what biological systems were involved in that particular. You are not able to study the interrelationship between the plant and animal together. Then what we are going to interesting thing is that when the cars are flying, how much the exhaust that has been released. This exhaust is studied by the chemistry in the form of chemistry or in the game known as atmospheric sciences. If the road is near the coastal region, the road polluted, oil slick, oil release can enter into the ocean or sea, and then we talk about oceanography. Then another one is the geological one that we also say. It takes millions of years the petroleum that have been formed here. And today, by means of various dumping that we do, now the same thing is going to happen when the electrical vehicle, the batteries will be dumped after some years. The same problem what the computers had to suffer in 90s and 2000, same will be faced with the batteries. So this is going to affect the human. It is also archaeology, then it also anthropology, human very existence. What will happen is that this will be responsible for division in a social form or sociological system, or there is also possibility that when the history will be written, this aspect will belong. Many of the people died of pollution, different disease and all. And this also has a repercussion of what is called as the political science. It refers to how the politics is using the environmental issue for benefit of the political gain. So thus we find that the environmental sciences involves with the nature, it involves with what is called culture, it involves with the technology. One, with the development in technology, the pressure is put on the nature, pressure is also put on culture. So culture is going to be suffering, then technology is going to suffer, and also limitations of the technology, limitations of the nature. So this is going to put a high pressure on the field of science called environmental sciences. How does this environmental science? Now, if you just look into what is called as the timeline of environment, the who were we? We were actually gatherers. If you look at our way, how our ancestors performed, you will find that we were actually gatherers. We were gathering the food. Then we were collecting it. Then we were scavenging upon it. dead animal used to be there. We used to eat the meat of those animal and live. That is how that we being hunters, we have been gatherers, we collected, we were scavengers, and then we used to live. After this, when we started for the revolution, the people from the living in a den, they came out of it. Two, three people they came together. Then they started to colonization evolved. When the colonization evolved, these people started to cultivate. The civilization normally happened near the water. So wherever the major rivers, say for example, say the Gangetic civilization, Tiber civilization, Euphrates civilization, or Indus civilization. So this where the agricultural system revolution took place, and people started to grow, breed, and care for plants. Where the population grew at a very high rate. So population grew. So the agriculture, so we became hunters, so we became agricultural, and agriculture people started to build for their survival, for their staying. They started to build living. They investigated what is called fire, then different types of tools which are useful for growing plant, even for breeding animals and caring for the plants. And therefore, at that time, the population grew. This is almost, if you find up till the 17th century, most people were, we commonly used to say, what culture we have, we have only one culture. We have, we have only one culture, that is called agriculture. In the background of the beginning of after 1857 onwards, we find the use of tools, that is the use of excessive energy, which we call as the industrial revolution. It started, and in the industrial revolution, the major aspect that was of use was the shifting of energy. The energy shifted not from the plant or the animal. Huge amount of energy shifted from animals. Animals we used water, fossil fuels. So fossil fuels were used like diesel, petrol, and other things to run factories, or less farming was done. And thus we find with the advent of industrial revolution, the human activity improved, the quality of life improved. Because most of the work were done by the machines. Machine used to synthesize your cloth, then chemicals, fertilizers, all those things. So that before we find that the life of the people improved during that time. But then with the development of the time and the facilities which was needed for a living, it also added up to what is called some type of problems. And those problems which was present, and that problems were the resource depletion. What were the resources that you had? For example, petroleum. You were taking out the petroleum in such a high quantity that the petrol level in the was decreasing. Another example, you take with the hand pump, you are removing water. Water is the resources, natural resources. So the content of the water also decreased. Or if you're removing coal from the coal mine, you find that the earth is sinking. I don't know how many of you belonging to Chhattisgarh or Bihar region, if sorry, or Jharkhand region, if you go there, you will find that because of the high depletion of resources of coal, you'll find the roads are already bent. So thus you find that there is a environmental problem. One way you're using it, we are harnessing the environment, and another way the environment is losing its own natural resources. So from renewable to non-renewable energy we are going for. So let us look into what is it. The energy from the sun is a renewable energy. Energy is you're getting it back. Water is renewable energy. Wood is renewable energy. Soil and air. Where non-renewable energy is metal such as iron, aluminium, and copper. Other one is non-metabolic metallic material such as salt, sand, and clay. Then you have a fossil fuel. So air, water, soil, they can be biodegradable or non-biodegradable. Now this is all for the resource depletion was taking place. What it had an impact, negative impact on what is called biodiversity losses. As I told you, in your agriculture, the field, if you have it, if you visit in the morning, you'll find a lot of birds will be there, chirping birds. There will be insects will be there. There will be a lot of centipedes will be there. There will be earthworms will be there. But when you convert this into a highway or road, that same land, you will lose the complete loss of biodiversity. And there is no natural resources will be seen. So the animal food, what is required, will be absent. Oxygen will be required for the animal living in the soil. And thus, these kind of things, problems arise. If we have to look into how the things that the indicators of developments are assessed, you have completely different parameters are taken. If you see the barrels, the amount of world consumption of the fuel, the upper one, you will find that the red line shows the cost per barrel. So cost of the barrel were more than 75,000 liters. From the barrel, it is coming down. In 2000, it was very less. And in 2020, it has reduced to less than $60. On the contrary, the barrel per day is increased. So thus you find in one point the barrel per day is 1,000, that is very high, and in contrast is the price where the price is completely less. So less, and these prices compared to 1980. 1980 is the right period because 1972, 72 to 1972 was a period of fuel conservation. A lot of problems were there. That was called as of the hike in the prices in 72, which was later on stabilized. And now we find it is the lowest value where the barrels are concerned. Now, if you look into the indicators of development from the standpoint of the United States, Japan, Mexico, and Indonesia, you will find the life expectancy here in health measurement is US is 77, Japan is 81, and 71.5 Mexico, and 68 is the life expectancy in these countries. If you see the population growth per year, it is 0.8, 0.2, 1.7, and 1.8. Then next indicator of development is the wealth. How much is the wealth that you have it? Per gross national product per person, how much money you have it? In USA, 29,240 US dollar. Japan has got 32,350. Then Mexico has got 3,840. And Indonesia is having 640 US dollar. How much is the living space available? The people per square mile is 78 in the US. In Japan, it is 859. And in case of 319 in case of Indonesia. And how much is this energy per billion ton unit, energy per year is consumed by this country is 351 by US, then Japan is 168, Mexico is 59, and the least one is Indonesia. Now, if you see these energy consumption, The rich country is per persons per year is very high compared to the Indonesia, which is not a well-developed country. Then you have pollution, that is the carbon dioxide from fossil and fuels per person per year. That is 20.4, 9.3, and 3.5, and 2.2. So this is the carbon dioxide from fossil fuel per person per year. That comes to this. So thus you find even the pollution level is less in case of Indonesia. In case of Mexico, it is 3.5. Highest pollution that has been added up is in USA. Even the energy use in USA is the highest. Then compared to the waste, garbage produced per person per year is about 720 kg per person is producing. And in case of Japan, 400, 340, 300, and in Indonesia is 43. So thus we find that there is always a decrease going towards it. And more of the modeling studies is required to understand the relationship between the gross wealth product per person and then the garbage produced by per person per year. Now, interesting thing is that how is that energy that is being used and how do we synthesize food from the sunlight? We all know that the carbon dioxide, the water, the light energy, the carbohydrate is formed and release of oxygen takes place. Once the release of oxygen takes place, the plant, the plant is something that gives you the so the lower figure that you find is a plant. Now plant is fed by rabbit, squirrels, mice, seed bird, eating bird, then herbivore also feed on this plant. Now this herbivore is fed by predaceous insect or they are fed by the toad. The toad is fed by snakes. The herbivore is insect is also eaten by snakes. The insectivorous birds is again eaten by snakes. And hawk and owl, they are the highest on the pyramid of food uh, web, where the rabbit, squirrel, mice, and seed-eating birds can be eaten by hawks and the owls. Thus, we come across what is called the exchange of matter and energy. So, we are calling these where the exchange of matter and the energy happens. We are calling that system as an open system. When the exchange was only energy and no matter, we call it as a closed system. In reality, there is no system that is purely isolated, closely isolated, closed or open. The same system can be isolated during some time interval during others. Now, if you look into, you find that when you talk about a biosphere is a closed system with respect to thousands of years. So, biosphere has been existing for thousands of years, and it can be an open system with respect to geological times. Here, the matter exchange with core and the mental and the environment. So thus you find the biosphere is a closed system. So the exchange of only energy takes place but no matter. Whereas in kind of open system, the matter and energy both are exchanged. Okay. Now we know that it is also necessary to know that this system generates heat to the environment, and to receive the low entropy energy, that is solar radiation, from the environment for the formation of the dissipative structure. So energy required for that purpose, and also you find that it will energy source and the sink also sufficient to initiate formation of dissipative structure, which is used as source for entropy combating process. Entropy combating process. So entropy, you're talking coming. So we have to deal with, when you're talking about the environment science, we're talking about the carbon science. We may have to mention most of the thing that is governed involves what is called thermodynamics. Yes, the flow of energy from source to sink leads to an example cycle. So the energy flow from one source to the another source is responsible for understand the energy process. This is the periodic table of elements which we all of us they know, and this is a general system of metals which is present in all the books. Okay, periodic table, and we have studied it during our student time. Now let us see some interesting aspects. At 0 K, this is not okay, it is 0 K Kelvin, 0 Kelvin, the world is dead and still. So at 0 Kelvin, the complete world is dead and is still. At 0 Kelvin, there is no structure, no gradient, and no complexity. So the complexity is not there. No gradient is seen, and also there is no structure is seen at 0 degree. So no entry that is formed because all mass is given everywhere and nowhere and without form and structure. So in entropy, we know when there is no entropy is formed because all mass is in everywhere and nowhere and without form and structure is present, and the system is trapped between complete order and because of mass couples. Mass occupies all the space and complete disorder. All the space is occupied by mass and complete dissipation had taken place. So thus you find that at zero, we are talking about a 0 degree. So we are talking about the 0 degree in the deep space. So in deep space, there is no entropy because of 0 K. And since there is no entropy, no structure, no gradient, and no complexity is seen. But if I do the entropy, you find that all mass has been distributed. And at 0 degree Kelvin, no creativity is possible, no difference of gradient or no structure, no physical activity is seen because all velocities are at 0. And every time, everything is dull and dead. And thus, if you see the complete pattern of the life existing systems, you'll find that there is no creativity. There is possible no different gradient or no structure, no physical activity, and all velocities are 0. And one more important thing is that at the same time, everything is dull and dead. Even light has stopped. Time has no meaning because time is determined by the rate of change. So the time itself is not working for us. When the time is counted, when the ticking of time starts when the Big Bang occurred. And this okay, 0 Kelvin, help us to understand the meaning of the entropy, that is the concept. So thus you find actually there should be some kind of a space should be present before order can be created. Therefore, we find entropy is the open side price we pay for order. It is organization and creativity. But without entropy, there could not be no order, structure, organization, and creativity. So thus we find that whenever you need development, you are doing it, you are constructing a building, 10-story, 20-story building, all that expenditure of money that you're going to put on it for creativity work, this all creativity work without entropy, there would be no order, structure, organization, and creativity. Now, this is one structure which is very commonly you must study or seen in any of the environmental biology books, where you find there is an auto factory emission. From the auto factory emissions, this passes through the CO2 cycle, above the CO2 cycle. And from that CO2 cycle, it is absorbed by the plant in the present sunlight for what you call as the photosynthesis. Photosynthesis converted into what you call dead organism and brought back into the sea. This is a reference that is taken from International Global Atmospheric Chemistry. You can look into a state when it is a developed state, when actually it is developed. Photochemistry, we all know transportation, that is fan, that also we know. We also know aeroplane that is passing through this for the comfort and we pay ticket of 17,000, 10,000, whatever it is. That money is actually there is emission of carbon happening while flying and it does spoil the atmospheric gases present on the earth. Similarly, the satellite, through satellite evaluation, assimilation you can study, transportation, fate can study, terrestrial emission can be studied, that biomass burning is one of the very hot subject that is happening, then deposition. Then you also have another one called as the ozone layer. We know that the CO2 or the general green gases is responsible for depletion of ozones. So stratosphere, troposphere exchange does take place, but the ozone level is affected. In stratosphere, the polar stratogenic cloud and troposphere give rise to what we call aerosol characteristics, then sea surface exchange and sea ice exchange. Now this is a little bit complicated pathways that you find that the red line is a CO2 and this is showing the represent the rapid soil fuel forming, and the other all heads that you have biosphere or life on earth, lithosphere or hydrosphere, then sedimentation, long-term sedimentation and carbon, all of these things will have a long time or short time effect on the carbon cycle. The respiration, the burning of the decay, the short-term carbon cycle, as well as the volcano release and the weathering long-term carbon. So many of the human and natural made them contribute to the gas making and the greenhouse effect worms, of the effect that warms the earth's surface. Water vapor, then the most important is followed by carbon dioxide, methane, and chlorofluorocarbon, CFCs. How much it comes? That comes to, for example, carbon dioxide reflected back to about 5.6%, methane 1.8%, CFC is 13%, and mm, nitrous oxide, that is 7.8%. So, such is the gases urgency that we have it in our life, where we have more, depending upon the more of the sources that is required for. This slide, it shows the human activity and greenhouse gases. They show the global warming at Coastland Science Museum. Now, this shows millions of metric tons of carbon that is equivalent. That is in industry something more than 600. Then transportation emission sector, it is something about 5,500, no 4,500. Then 450, and then residential is something is 300 approximately. Commercial should be less, and agriculture is still less. So the world economy that runs on the carbon, the fuel of fossil fuel, coal, oil, and natural gas for industrialized nation and carbon dioxide. Now, with this graph, it pertains to the US report. Thus, again, it shows the same thing, industrial consumption very high. That's what we had discussed in the previous slide. The CO2 contribution contribute more to the recent increase in greenhouse gas warming when they are with other gas. Though CO2 persists in the atmosphere longer and longer. This is a typical examples of whatever we do, energy we use in our life have an impact for climate change. So what is important? We are driving the car, we are making toast, we are having electricity, we are using different lab sources, we are we are using cow for plowing the garden or field for agriculture. In that same thing, you have a methane, which is the second largest group of greenhouse gases, which is responsible for global warming. And methane is behind carbon dioxide, and cows are one of the greatest requests is of methane emitters because they exhale methane, a byproduct of digestion of their grassy diet. The sheer size of cow herd makes a significant contribution to global warming. This is the references is taken from global warming. Reduce your carbon footprint, take action. Let's look at the scenario, how it looks. There is always uncertainty of 5% for one standard deviation according to interplanet of climate change with a likely range that have been given. Look at the top one. You find a car you have been left, you're walking around with the food, the milk bus, fruit bus, everything is coming across you. That means how the more you are depending upon the energy that is derived by the systems. Now, if you look into another this graph, you find from 1990 to 2015, there is a CO2 emission was very high by 300 to 300, sorry, 2000 to 9, it is 3 plus 2, 6%. And projection for 2015 had been 35.7 gigaton of CO2. This is a diagram showing how the picture shows how worst is the situation in the factories from where the gases are released, toxic gases are released and are responsible for adding up the poisonous gas in our nature and making our the temperature, that is climatic temperature, is increased. Now, when you talk about this, we're talking about also the very important how the a measure of how much a person consumes, how much a person consumes, which we talk it as the ecological footprint. If you consider here this as your leg, the region here where is an energy, this is much is the energy is contributed by the car which is plying per day or per hour that you counted. Then you can also see the settlements. You can see the timber and paper. Then you find that's all that's needed for the human being. Then you have a food and fiber, then seafood, fisheries, cropland and pasture, forest, built up land, and carbon footprint. So thus, if you compare from that, the present day footprint is this. If you consider for a human population, the complete whole global population change would be of such a kind is expected in coming years. So you have a green gas is carbon dioxide, methane, and chlorofluorocarbon and ozone. And all this data is shown in the billion tons, that is. So 1 gigaton corresponds to something 1 pentagram of methane. Then chlorofluorocarbon, 1 kg of carbon, which is equal to 3.664 kilo carbon dioxide, and gigaton is 3.66 million, which is at the present case, it goes to about 3.644 gigaton of carbon dioxide. So the Earth's major atmospheric gases that Earth has, one is nitrogen, you have oxygen. These are called non-greenhouse gases. Now, if you see, non-greenhouse gases that contribute to something 99%, and this is the gases which is producing is very less, and yet you find this the drastic effect that is seen is very, very high. So carbon dioxide and methane, which forms the 1% and the greenhouse gases that has been contributed to it. Oxygen is utilized, water is forming, and nitrogen is also useful because 70% of our Earth composition is of nitrogen. Now let us look into carbon fluxes, human impact. The first outreach that you find here, history to the future of the human development. If you start from the hut, then agriculture, where we are associated with the environment. From those environment, we are entering into the buildings, which we call as the concrete jungles. These concrete jungles, if you stay there, you find the internal temperature is about 3 degrees higher than the outside temperature. And then what do? You are putting everywhere, the air circulation is not there, you are putting a AC. And through AC, you are paying electricity bill. And for paying the electricity bill, that energy what you utilized is paid in the form of money. Actually, you are paying for indirectly paying for the carbon dioxide that is forming. Second one, if you see the middle one is explore this emission. The how much the emission is there. You see the bigger one is the US, United States of America. You have a China and other region, okay, Japan and all, and India is also not lacking behind. And some of the countries they're so huge that the impact is less. Now, if you see the visualize the research of carbon data and get access through the provided, you find the red line of the graph is where the excess of data warming temperature is seen. This is the data of 2000 transportation fuel, which is 14%. Industrial process is about 16.8%. Power stations 21.3%. Waste disposal and treatment is 3.4%. And 10.0% is the land use and biomass burning. Then 10.3% is residential, commercial, and other sources. Fossil fuel retrieval, processing, and distribution is 11.3%, and agricultural byproduct is 12.5%. Now, if you look onto all these aspects, you find that the total contribution, if you see, during from the earlier figure of 16.8, industrial, transportation 14, agriculture 12, fossil fuel is 11.3, all that, if you bring it back, how much is the carbon dioxide that will evolved from this? It says that it is something 72% of the carbon dioxide is being formed. You can see down here. You can see here. So 72% of the total. From this same thing, methane is 18% and 9% is a nitrous oxide. So you are finding that these all power station waste disposal, land use, then residential, commercial, and other sources, the fossil fuel, each of these they are contributing to 72% of the total carbon dioxide. So now what we have to do? The solution is: should we stop the transportation of fuel? Should we stop agricultural? Should we stop residential, commercial, and other sources? You want development. You want to mitigate the carbon, the climate change. These two things, development and economics, do not go hand in hand. So the important thing now, if you put that power station cut down, then the contribution is also very 29% of carbon dioxide come from that. Industrial process is about 20% is coming from that. From the fuel of transportation, 19 point, that is more than that. So this is, you find there is a continuously disturbing changes that we found. The amount and the quantification, they are different. Similarly, in case of methane, you are got in 18%, and therefore the chance, therefore the need, therefore our thinking, in order to contain the emission of the greenhouse in environment, we need immediate steps for it. This is another very emission pledge submitted to the Paris Climate Summit: avoid the worst effect of climate change and most studies suggest likely temperature increase of about 3. So all these three, the red one, this all different projections that have been done. This is all mathematical emission project proposal, which shows that almost 3.2 to 5.4 degree of temperature, rising temperature is there. During this period, it was 2 to 2.3. So we are somewhere here, 2020. So there is a steep increase in the rise in temperature, and then by 240 there is again you can see this. There is a continuous exponential form of increase in the temperature, and that temperature need to be curbed. Is it possible to do it? That we have to see it. What measures are being done by the nation? Every nation will dictate to the developing country to reduce the content of CO2. On the contrary, they themselves do not do it. Now, if you look into CO2 emission, in 1960, there was no very little emissions were seen in India. By 2014, it is something increased by 8.6%. It has got increased into 2.6. So India, the prospect is not good because it is showing increase. Look at the European Union, which was started by 28.3, is showing a decline of 3.6. That is 5.8% of decline, 8.3% of increase. And in USA, if you see, you'll find that there is a nominal increase of 0.8% with 5.6. And China, which was in control, which was less than the European, after 2000 years stretch, what we call the developing or developed China, is now showing a continuously exponential increase of 1.2% in 2014 with overall of 9.7. So highest emitting factor is China, then USA, followed by European Union, and the India, which is less. But the steps taken by the European Union, they are better because they are showing now in 2014 there is a decline in the CO2 emission of by 4.8%, where India is showing increase in 8.2. With very short period, India may overtake this thing. Another one is that bunker fuels are used for international transport in 3% of the global emission, and statistical difference are between the global estimate and some of the national totally 1.1% of the global emission. Similarly, if you see the top fossil fuel emitters, top fossil fuel. If you take a fossil fuel, US is the highest in 2014, 17.4. Then European Union, they have reduced to 6.8. China is little higher, 7.1. And world consumption is almost same. And India is showing an increase in 2014 onwards. There is increase in 2. Now, this is another CO2 allocating emission to consumption of goods and services provides alternative perspective. I think how much is the consumption of goods and service provided? This is the production. This is the consumption. This production is increasing in the China. Also, the consumption is also increasing. Production and consumption. Here, production, consumption are almost same. Here, the production is European Union, and here there is the same. Consumption is also almost same high. This is high. This is low. Civil India consumption and production, they are running at the same level. So we are not responsible for very high CO2 contributions. Same thing, this is with reference to GDP. The India's role is very less. European Union followed by China, USA, and China, USA, EU, and India. This is the averaged global for the decade 2005 to 2014. How the anthropological disturbances have resulted into increase in the global carbon. So fossil fuel, see, this is the geological reservoir fossil fuel. We have been used up. How much fossil fuel? 33% has been used up. Geological fuel that is being lifted up, and global carbon dioxide budget that is for land use has been increased by 3.4, and land sink has been 10.9 to 2.9, and ocean sink is 9.5 to 1.8. This is the budget of global budget in 2015, and you will find that the CO2 level have increased to 2008 presently now is something about 300, and present now it is something about 380 ppm of CO2 level on this earth where we are living. This is the slide which shows that how much is the fossil fuel that we use by the industry, the land use changes, and land sink, atmosphere, and ocean sink. So you find that when by 1880 this was almost negligible, and by 20 years it has been increasing in such a way that it has shown carbon sources for fossil fuel industry. Land use change emissions are balanced. Atmosphere and carbon sink on the land and in the ocean. So this is all. This much is balanced by this ocean. Same thing if you look at atmosphere 1870 and 2014. The CO2 increased to 397 compared to 288 when it was. This is the CO2 emission from fossil fuel use and industry, where you have the CO2 emission, and the CO2 emission with GDP is calculated. So CO2 emission, emission is increasing to 0.20 CO2 emission. Then emission intensity is decreasing, and projected value is it is decreasing. So projected value of this is completely different. So very simple is a projection in see here. This is the projection. So in 2015 there is a decrease. There is a decrease of CO2 emission, and here there is a GDP. There is increase. So we are in some of the inflection point here, where in 2000 everything was fine. Now we are finding a huge gap in between the emission and the GDP into GDP. The highest energy consumption is 2.7% per year of coal, then 4.4 of oil, gas is 12.7, nuclear is 30.3, hydro 10.5, and other renewable things has been found. The energy consumption, other form is the coal is still the highest one. Now that is almost decreased from 2000, it has decreased to 800, 8.3. Then in India, this is in China. Okay, so you find the same proportion getting, but it is 2000, here it is 400, almost very less now. And then you find oil usage is about 3.7 increased. It is more than less than China. So from comparing to China, Indian consumption is less. So change in CO2 emission from fossil fuel is the annual change in the global CO2 emission, and this is the annual change of India, and it is a change of total world, and it is global change of India. US, China, EU, okay, and rest of the world. This is the CO2 cumulative emission of CO2 with respect to temperature, that you're finding that by 2040 the temperature will increase by 2 degrees centigrade because of carbon. Now the simple question that is coming, is the world getting warmer? If so, are the actions of mankind to blame for the Earth's atmosphere temperature increase? This other question that has been asked. What can or should be done about these changes, these issues? Then we have to go back. We're talking about the climate change, then we have to go back to the history of the Earth climate. What is the Earth? Earth has been formed in 4.6 billion years ago. Originally, it was very hot. Sun's energy output only 70% of the present, and liquid water was present nearly 4.3 billion years. So, if you see the history of Earth climate, life appeared about 3.8 billion years ago. Photosynthesis began 3.5 to 2.5 billion years ago and produced oxygen and removed carbon dioxide and methane, that is greenhouse gases. Earth went through a period of cooling, that is snowball Earth, and warming. And Earth began cycles of glacial and interglacial period about 3 million years ago. So world carbon emission, if you see, it is something like this. Carbon emission 10 to 9 metric ton was 2000, we found with that. White, this thing. So liquid fuel, solid fuel, gas fuel, and total of the fuel that has been observed. What is the future carbon dioxide level? Increases CO2 emissions, especially China and developing country, one. Then likely to double within 150 years. And increased coal usage, increased natural gas usage, and decreased petroleum usage are to be noted. Now we are talking about this slide is a very important slide for our understanding of how the climatic change occurs. I have asked you, I have discussed with you CO2 level here. Look at this, 302. Okay, this is your global temperature. So the global temperature is reduced in the Ordovician, Devonian, Carboniferous, that this is the Triassic, this is Jurassic period. In Carboniferous period, the carbon dioxide was 380, almost 300. Okay. And then it has increased, never gone down to touch to this position. Now here, this is a present one. This is the Carboniferous period, The carbon dioxide level 380 and 380 both are almost similar. Same is the temperature. The temperature at that period was 27. Here also 37 degree temperature was seen. Now the question is whether the climatic change occurs once in a while or it is the combination. The Earth has gone back to this. There was a continuous climate change, continuous climate cooling, and the cycle was going on. Is it true or not? We have no answer for it, but the geological studies indicate that this thing had happened, and therefore climate change is a natural geological phenomena which occurs. This is the slide showing that how the coal mining taking place, and 50% of the electricity in USA is through coal mining. Now, if you replace just one incandescent light bulb with one compact fluorescent bulb, saves about 150 pounds of carbon dioxide per year. Now, if every American household replaced just 5 high-use incandescent bulb with compact fluorescent light, we would collectively save more than $5 billion each year in energy cost, and we would prevent the greenhouse gas equivalent to the emission from nearly 10 million cars. So this is the equivalence that the government has taken. So what is important in order to save the carbon footprint? Replace the old refrigerator with a new Energy Star. Annual saving is about 700 pound of CO2. You can reduce it something about $90. Then drive just 10 fewer miles per week. Annual saving will be about 550 pound of CO2. Wash clothes in cold water. Only annual saving. So if you cold water, if you are doing it, you are saving about $70. And set your thermostat down a few degree in the winter. So annual saving is $135, and reduce the garbage by 10% through greater recycling or reduced packaging. That will save about 1,200 pounds of CO2. So the throwing away of containers of any kind of waste, energy, and resources and adds to our waste problem. Many towns are running out of landfill space. Our dependence on cars that burn fossil fuel is one of the major causes of increased level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it is a primary cause of urban smog. Quickly and usually more nutritious than frozen of canned food, canned and frozen vegetables are over often overprocessed, contain additives, contribute to air pollution, transport and packaging, and add to our waste product. Then also another way we can reduce is making paper and plastic bag uses energy and resources. The bag adds to our litter and waste problem, and plastic is non-biodegradable. Recycling is not the best answer because collecting and recycling metal requires energy. Instead, carry a reusable cloth bag or a knapsack with you. Paper comes from tree. The more of it we use, the more trees that are cut down. Okay. Polystyrene and other plastic containers are made from precious petrochemical and do not decompose in landfills and release toxic gases when they are burnt in incinerators. Next one that we are finding is carbon-based life do not occur in gaseous phases or liquid diffusion. Carbon-based life on Earth requires abundant water to deliver two important elements, that is water and oxygen, hydrogen and oxygen. And water as solvent needs nitrogen, phosphate, sulfur, and other metal ion for carbon-based life. So our life is made up of carbon. So target of IPCC is 1.5 degrees, that is October 18. 1.5 degrees resulted in 70% coral reef. And a rise in 2 degrees will result in 99% of the coral reefs to be damaged. The Paris Agreement capped 1.5 degree and limit at 2 degree, and the limit of 2 degree will reduce 25% of carbon by 2030 and by zero by 2070. So can we reduce the temperature to 1.5 degrees? Yes, we can reduce it by using electric car, constructing zero emission building, more trains, even with technology improvement, and any future economic growth or when consumption rises, we need energy to produce all the things that are consumed. When income rises, the CO2 emission also rises. If income rises by 10%, CO2 rises by 9%. US and Europe share most global emission, and now China is the single largest emitter of carbon. Now you know that 10% of the world population is responsible for 50% of CO2. 50% of world population account for 10% CO2. And Lancet Commission report on pollution and health says. Similarly, 9 million premature deaths due to air pollution in 2015 and more than 2.5 million of deaths in India alone have been reported in a single country. All biosphere energy process use only electromagnetic energy. If human used only electromagnetic energy, then all environmental ecological process can be resolved. But as soon as human use the later form energy, nuclear power plant, and moreover intend to use the thermonuclear synthesis, she enters into principal contradiction with the biosphere. So human nuclear power plant is also suggestive, but it is the environmental ecological crisis. Electromagnetic energy is the one that is to be used. So our take-home message is each of us must take steps to protect our Earth's climate. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. If you got any questions, you can ask. No questions? Huh? Okay.
Just a minute, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I actually, I'm here for a vote of please. Sir. Just a minute.
I have my lecture also now.
Yes, sir. Just a minute. On the behalf of HRDC, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, and all the participants.
Hello, sir. Hello, 26 roll number.
Yeah, tell
Yes,
me.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
सर अजून घेणार आहेत. सर तुम्ही अजून कंटिन्यू करणार आहात ना?
After 10 minutes, I will take.
ओके ओके जस्ट 10 minutes break.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
हेलो मैम। हेलो।
तुम जा रहे हो मेरे को बोलो आपको भी जाएगी सब आ जा रहे हैं नहीं उसको तो आप भी जा सकते हो प्राइवेट स्कूल के लिए हम कर हाँ एक बार चलो इस साइड हाँ लेकर और वो और टीमों को लगाए
ऊपर का
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
ये ऊपर क्यों जाता है फिर ये नहीं निकलता क्या? तो वो बीच में आएगा उसको कहीं साइड में उसको कोलैप्स नहीं कर सकता. देखने में प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है नीचे जो कैप्शन हो तो फिर वो पढ़ नहीं पाएंगे.
नहीं उनको दिखता है सर पूरा.
मुझे भी दिखेगा.
हाँ
बोलो स्टार्ट करना है.
ऑलरेडी पार्टिसिपेट आ चुके हैं मीटिंग में.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर.
ओके.
Yes sir, yes.
So shall we start?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Second lecture is a part of animal science. Okay. What are the challenges? What are the future strategies? Okay. And how the research advancement took place. Now you know that we have always been confused. What is animal science versus zoology? Those who are a zoologist, they know it. Those who are not a zoologist, they always have why it is animal science and why it is zoology, why it is called such. Name has been given to it. So when you consider animal science, it is a study of animals. That includes nature, function, and productivity, and that are under the management of man in some way. So animal science is where the study of animal under the management of man, which includes wildlife is excluded in that. And it provides some aspect of veterinary, biomedical science that can be rather distinct. This differentiated from zoology. So when you talk about zoology, zoology will include wildlife. Whereas if when you talk about animal science, it excludes the wildlife. So that forms the difference between zoology and this. And understanding animal as a biological system and the role of animal as component of broader systems. These are the two important things. Now, by being allied to animals that are under the management, that excludes the wildlife, it includes the process progress in animal science, like the necessity for the intellectual understanding and the progress and utility that understanding the practices. This is the definition that was given by Professor Oldham from Ireland. When you talk about recent advances, what does recent mean? Recent is open to some kind of an interpretations. What are the interpretations that it has? It is often refers to the rate at which some new techniques can help to generate data in research. It appears that rates of progress are accelerating. That means the rate of change of velocity or rate at which the techniques are governed, rate at which the knowledge is gaining, rate at which the data is generated. These all are important items necessary for the acceleration to take place. When you talk about the rate or the progress, we are talking about the progress with reference to the time. Say what happened in 10 years, what happened in 20 years, what happened in 1 year, what happened in last 50 years. So that is the progress that has took place. And every discovery, what we have it, that discovery has a definite value in our understanding and also in our life. These things are changes that is occurring can be seen. So from that standpoint, the progress will be considered span small numbers of years, but a broader perspective needed to recognize some of the major areas of progress. So what is progress? In any science, driven by a mixture of imagination to generate the idea that are worth pursuing and the acquisition of appropriate technique to allow those ideas to be tested. Now, if you see, let us go back to 1770 to 1727 to 1839, that is almost 112 years. What was the major discovery that was done? That was done was of photography. 1821 to 1886, last 65 years, the biggest discovery was of electric motor. Then 1820 to 1876, in last 56 years, the discovery was of telephone. And 1867 to 1902, in last 35 years, radio. Then 1884 to 1915, 33 years, was the vacuum tube. And 1895 to 1913 is the 18 years when X-ray tubes were discovered. And in 1925 to 1940, 50 years were radar. And 1922 to 1935, in 12 years, discovery of television took place. And 1932 to 1942, that is 10 years, is a nuclear reactor. And 1939 to 1945, 6 years atomic bomb. And 1948 to 1951, 3 years was a transistor. And 1953 to 1955, that is for 2 years, it was the solar battery. So like that, you find that the discoveries was means in the span of 112, only one discovery could take place. With changing time, within 2 years, some discovery is being done. Therefore, there is a continuous chain. Discoveries are continuously happening when the years are there. What are the major progresses of progress? Some of the fields like important fields like genetics, molecular approach. These two things. One, what did genetics did? Genetics help to develop animal whose rate of productivity are dramatically increased, sometimes with negative associated consequences, which are now being corrected by adjustment to selection approaches. So genetics of better, good genetic species by fish, animal, mammals, poultry, which are beneficial for mankind, has been tried for. Another one is a molecular approach that replaced more conventional quantitative method, but that are yet to be fully realized. But the prospect of new genome-wide selections are considerable. So, through gene, we are we are selecting those animals. Next field that are of interest is the nutrition and nutritional biochemistry, which is a yield rationing scheme that work tolerably well and allow some control over the qualities of product that animal produce. So you find that if it is forming a triangle where society at the apex, culture and person, so society and culture and society, culture and person, person and culture, and society and culture, they are all are interrelated to one another. And in the center, you have this cultural reproduction or social integration, socialization. So the nutrition is important. Now, also we know that the situation in Indian nutritional systems are not good. So various nutritional systems are to be needed, and we have to do a lot of considerable nutrient research so that this will be useful to the people. This will be useful to the people. The next one is the reproductive processes. Reproductive processes have grown substantially, and with the new knowledge have resulted into what is called adding up or catching up to the advances that have been made in the science. Then another very important research area or future research area is of research on pregnancy and lactation for all mammalian species, including man, has though been considered advanced through the animal sciences. Our understanding of the process of disease have been enabled through the animal as well as veterinary and medical sciences. So all the domesticated animal, milch animal, including us, needs considerable amount of research into an understanding of the processes of disease, such that the animal as well as the animal as well as veterinary and medical sciences could give you the such answers which are helpful to you. Then next one is that of the welfare of animal. What kind of welfare of animal is needed? It is appreciated to become open to the assessment and improvement. The phenotypic expression, that is the outer expression of an animal, will actually give a knowledge of a genotype and environment, and it still as aspiration rather than a reality. Another aspect is what we call as waste management. This is important to reduce pollution or grabbing to achieve biodiversity goals. Animal that influence the social or operating animal environment, for example, system and animal management, can be important for social cohesion and are important sources of work, power, or equity. The impacts of animal on the environment are a source of much current concern. Some of these relates to issues around climate changes, others to the management of pollution or of managing diversity. So waste management is one of the very, very important aspects because recycling takes. Now, what is happening in the waste management? What are the inputs? Feed, animal feed, the bedding, fertilizers, legume that will lose into loss in water and losses in the soil storage, and output is the animal meat, then meat and eggs, crops, and manures. And this whole thing is recycled and then they are thrown out. The big drivers of grand challenge for the animal sciences are to produce animal product in appropriate abundance that are beneficial, that it should not be worst or not should be detrimental. Animal product should be appropriate and abundance. If the healthiness of our diet that are produced with minimal waste by efficient use of resources and minimization of losses through disease and reproductive failure especially. So for healthier diet is important and they are produced with minimal waste and that add up for the resources and minimization of losses and the negative impact being benefit to the environment and socially acceptable way. According to Hans Beeman, one of the greatest embryologists of his time, said that what has been achieved is but the first step. We still stand in the presence of a riddle that, but not without hope of solving them. Riddles with the hope of solution. What more can a man of science desire? Now, when we find that the advancement in the mankind and welfare took place very different way because of the active use of animals in the welfare of mankind. And mankind's welfare have actually literally turned our understanding and looking towards the animal have also changed. And most of the animals that have been used, for example, Pavlov's famous experiment in which we are now calling it as a classical conditioning using better known and not well as popularly believed. For this, Paulo received the Nobel Prize in 1904 in Nobel Prize for Medicine. Then another one is the paradox of Schrödinger rat, theoretical construction of 1930 to explain how wave-particle duality superposition is really, in reality, either dead or alive. This was the experiment that will be done when whether the cat is live or cat is not live. Without opening the box, how you're going to tell? A condition which was well known in physics as a paradox of Schrödinger. Then one very interesting animal is Dolly, which I think that most of you are knowing. Dolly was born on 5th July 1996 in Edinburgh. Dolly was the first animal to be cloned. Somatic cell nuclear transfer from an adult cell. And then it was genetically identical to donor, and Dolly died of lung complication February 2003. Her body is preserved and kept in Royal Museum of Scotland. These are the animals that have been generated or created with using the somatic cell nuclear transfer experiment, and which proved that the mammal udder cell have the capability to create a human body or an animal because of without using the sperm cells. Another this dog that you can see down is the first animal to orbit Earth. On 3rd November 1957, Laika took off on board Sputnik 2, which never returned. In fact, this mission was considered or designed in such a way that the rabbit will never come return to Earth. Dog would never return to Earth. Therefore, thereafter, the Soviet Union never sent animal without a plan to return, and Velka and Estriga dogs traveled on board Sputnik 5 and returned sound and safe. That is the first time that the human people outraged against the Soviet Union, and the first time the animal ethics came into existence in 1962 in Helsinki conference, and the life of animal and research was hampered. If you look at the chronology of since 1901 till today, how many people have received the medicine, Nobel Prize in Medicine or Physiology? You find that 76% got it with animal used, 90 to 91 rat, mice, fish, and birds are used, and 90 to 95% rat, mice, fish, birds were used, and 95% of our gene share with rodents. Hence, they are key in genetic research and studies of the nervous system. Fruit fly is the best experimental animal is Drosophila, and it has an ideal qualities for research, and 5 Nobel Prize for this study this uh, fruit fly. And this has been one of the most important fly used to study the circadian rhythm. Today, the animal experimentation is highly reduced, controlled, focused on body pain, and they look for the alternative we use in vitro organisms or even computational model. But for the time being, no artificial system can duplicate complexity of the living organism. See there, after these things, we were trying to do what is called as the system biology, and then we want to do what is called as the synthetic biology. Our knowledge, they don't know how the uh, research could be done. Unfortunately, with systemic biology, we can create an animal. It has now been done with the bacteria, also it has been done with the phage. But for the higher complicated animals, you have to wait for a few more years. So the system biology is modeling simulation techniques, how the metabolic pathways that have been controlled is studied through systemic body, and through systemic body, we are understanding how the uh, uh, life can be generated. If you see the complexity of it, the major share of India's animal science as that of the milk animal and livestock and poultry. This is the diagram of typical animal tree of animal kingdom. Different phyla have originated from different places, and that though it looks like a highly comprehensive figure, it is it shows that how the nematode, annelid, then brachiopoda, arthropoda, they all have evolved differently, one branch the other. This is another branch, this is a third branch that are evolved. This is a diagram of Dr. Varghese Kurian, who has been considered to be the father of white revolution. And is the man behind the success of Amul, and is also called father of white revolution. He is in India. He is also known as milkman of India. India set out the Anand developed and engineered the white revolution and made India the largest milk producers of world. So you know that this is how that the milk production that took place. This is a white revolution in 2011 was to 121.8. It is increased by 6 million tons, then by 132, then to 140, etc. So this is a detailed chart by which the amount of milk that has been increased by using this. Now, where does India stands? India stands as number one for total livestock population, meat production, cattle production, buffalo production, and carabao beef production, goat milk production. Second one is goat population, bristle population, that is a big industry by product, and fish production is the second, and sheep production and egg production is third, chicken production is fourth, and poultry meat production and poultry production is fifth, and duck production is eighth. So where this is where India stands. Now, if you see in 2019, the cattle population of time was once 192.49 is the cattle production in India, whereas the egg production has been 458. Number of eggs in billion, that is 458 billions of eggs that has been found in China. Then India, the goat is 148.88, where the United States is higher at 109. Okay, buffalo is 109.5% by type or by millions. There 109.95% is India. Next, if you see that, so China being the first in egg production, second in United States, India, Mexico, Brazil, Russia, Japan, Indonesia, Turkey, and Pakistan. And same way, India leading in cattle, goat, buffalo, sheep, pig, the mithun, and horse and ponies, camel. The poultry development is a household activity in India, and scientific poultry production in India gained momentum during the last 4 decades due to the concerted effort of the government of India through policies, institutions, and focused research and initiative taken by the private sector. So, what are the challenges and strengths of Indian poultry sector? They are the number three producers and number five poultry meat chicken and eggs. They are contribute to what you call the animal protein, and they have got a skill deficit of 39 veterinary colleges are there in India and about the center, but fail to keep pace with the growth of industry. Then poultry items are 75% or more non-vegetarian people are consuming, and industry growth rate of 12 to 15% compared to the GDP of GDP growth rate has been found. Another very challenge is that in poultry is the logistic one and ingredient that feed like soybean and corn. This is a typical uh, statement or a diagrammatic representation that how this the eggs are trimmingly that is 25 then 90,000 values of the Indian poultry market and 596 crores is revenue from poultry vehicle. So this things is also a diagram showing that in a poultry system where they have these ladies taking care of this global market, it has a thing. Then this is the diagram which shows that the prices of key regions, that is the region in US is 1.48 pound, egg is 0.05 per dozen. So all these things, and India, we are standing at poultry prices about 75 or 3.8 per egg. That is now have increased to 7 rupees or something. But enough of the egg, we have it in India, such that we can also freely give to all the school children, free egg can be given so that their nutritional value could be increased. Another one that I questioned you regarding the nutritional physiology is that of under heat stress. The heat stress relief, that the proper heat stress assessment, equal cooling to heifers, lactating and dry cows, continuous monitoring of hypothermia, and careful and vigilant husbandry. The primary feeding care that is been carried out by correcting the cow energy balance, increased energy rich diet, low bulk feeding, and caring animal pH and acidosis. Primary feeding CP present CRDP about 10%, palm oil, cotton diet around. Then you need a special type of feeding is needed, like yeast fermentation to romanism, the feed, chromium, sodium, potassium, salt, dietary calcium and iron. Now again we'll be coming back to some issues, that is how much is the CO2 that is released by a cow. For example, if the CO2 equivalent emission from producing half a pound of this food are the same as the emission by from driving. in potato is as the same as 1.7 mile is the CO2 equivalent. Then you have asparagus, apple, then chicken, all having the pH value of 0.7. Then pork, then pork 2.52 miles and 9.81 miles of the beef is converted into CO2 equivalent. So what are the CO2 impact is there? The planet land surface occupies about 30% of the livestock industry, 30% of the national water footprint in the US alone, and human induced greenhouse gas emission due to livestock and pastures and rangelands have been degraded due to overgrazing and erosion. So sector-wise, if you see, you will find livestock population is the highest in the world in India. And livestock population, and in 2019, you find that the highest is the cattle population, followed by goat population, then buffalo, and then sheep population. If you see the global meat consumption, India is very weak. United States is highest, Australia, United Kingdom, and India is the lowest. And in India, if you see, most of the Goa and Kerala is the highly meat eating people found there. If you look into the calorie content per 100 gram of wheat, we find that the calorie content of the chicken is 109, duck is 286, lamb is 526, then beef is 253.7, pork is 262, turkey 98, and quail is 160. So this is the calorie per content of 100 gram of the meat that you are taking. So now in India, the meat drawn from chicken is increasing, and here you have fish and shellfish that is almost similar. The only rice that you can find is the beef rice, and they will change according to the season. So beef carbon footprint, if you take, the main source of the emissions are source of greenhouse gases that emitted from beef consumption is 27 kg of CO2 per kilogram. That is about 56% of production emission of carbon beef consumed beef, and 19% production of emission from unfavorable waste and production emission from avoidable waste and post-farming emissions. This is a article that was a photo taken up in Guardian. You can see that how the cows are eating plastics and all. And similarly, down also is the picture is showing that the situation in India is very, very poor. This is the animal that is feeding on the grasses. Okay, and you are having the production of emission of consumed beef is 53%, 19 and 15 and 10.4 is the post-farming production of emission and production emission from the unavoidable waste. Meat consumption CO2, meat consumption, developed countries are meat production is very this, and here developed countries it is presumed that it will increase food consumption in developing countries are highest is the meat, milk and cereal, roots and tubers, and in the CO2 production, when you pound of CO2 per pound of the all product taken, you find that the cheese is the highest one, 10.8 CO2 production, and beef 20 and 12 is saffron, is the shrimp and salmon is 6%. Now, Indian dairy industry is one more industry that is coming up in a huge way. And this huge way of coming up of the Indian dairy is something about 6.8% have grown over the last decade. The proportion of the total greenhouse gas emission from food are quarter of the global emission come from food. That is, food is about 26%. Then 58% is animal product and 50% is beef and lamb product. Now, you'll find that how much is when you need animal and the agriculture, we are using the highest amount of the water footprint. And this water footprint, if you calculate, you'll find that the water per 1 pound of meat you require for chicken is 520 gallons, and for pork 720 gallon, and for cow it is about 1250, and for genetically modified cows you require about 1850 gallons of resources. So if you same thing if you compare with the lab grown meat and animal, you know that lab grown meat is now becoming very common in European countries. That is, the water loss is about 1799 gallon, whereas lab grown is 324, and in here is 16 pound, here is 3.52, here is 260 square feet, here is 2.6 square feet. So dollar wise also one, this is dollar wise it is costly. So water wise you are saving money, but with dollar wise you are increasing the lab growth rate. Okay, but then there is now a move in the European Union to ban the lab grown meat. On the contrary, the lab grown meat, the government of India is considering to allow for sale. So there is a contradiction. One country wanted to ban the meat, which is lab grown rather than animal meat, and another country wanted to stop it. One. And second thing is that when the greenhouse effect from the different kind of eating habit per capita and per annum is considered with that of the car kilometers moved, that is veganism. The person eating purely food derived from vegetable or crops, it is goes to about 281 kilometer of the car speed kilometer. And conventional farming that will give you, organic farming will give you, whereas conventional farming will give you 629 kilometers. That per capita of the is converted into the per capita income of car kilometer. Vegetarians they used 1978 kilometer, then Conventional farming gives 2,427. So your diet includes the milk, then cow and agriculture, which goes to 4,377 in case of organic farming and 4,758 in case of conventional farming. In burping that takes place in the cows, the microbes in the cow's stomach break down the cattle feed into usable source of energy and protein and produce methane. And this methane is burped out through mouth, and therefore 95% of this situation is that are generated out. Whereas methane in case of buffalo is about 404 per gram, beef it is 295, whereas milk from cow is 87, pork is 55 gram, and chicken is 35 gram. Then animal waste management. How does the animal waste occurs and how it is managed? The resources for recovery is energy. Energy can be taken by the animal waste for energy biogas, cropland, ethanol, digesters can be used or liquid solid gases. This digester will use methane as a sludge for soil application, can be filtered and form a composite. Nutrient that is cellular protein, bacterial, fungal, algal will give photosynthesis separated, water, feed and energy, reuse and cycle. Bacterial will give aeration, separation, feed, water, animals and fish recycles, and then fungal is aeration, separation, feed, and chicken and fish. And for water aeration, there is reuse, irrigation, and flushing is needed. That is the animal waste that can be. This is a typical example of the primary digester, there of secondary digester, then composite manure, then recycle waste, and this biogas can be then used for electricity and generation. Now, as far as the waste is concerned, the sanitary waste, the dry waste, organic waste, and all, there have been different processes by which these are eliminated or taken care of by. So the waste is first is segregated by red, green, and blue, and then these are used in the industries or organic work, compost, or only for sanitary waste is sent to the common landfill. And through landfill, it is recycled material is used through industry. From industry, it goes to the decentralized waste management process. The top five cities that segregate currently, they belong to Indore, Bhopal, Mysuru, then Panchgani and Greater Hyderabad, where the Center for Science and Environment report, according to 2018 report, these are the five cities that segregate the waste. So how do we feed 10 billion people? We will need about by 2050 about 56% more feed to feed nearly 10 billion people in next 2050. So we need to prevent agriculture and expanding without using more land and to save an area of forest nearly two times that of the budget. By lowering emission, we can lower the emission by 12 gigaton to CO2 to minus 62. This is also one way in which we can remove this. So advantage for India is robust demand, attractive opportunities, then policy support, rising private activity. Now, with this, what is happening here? By expanding the middle class and increasing their affordability, are demand drivers for technologically advanced product. Then India is the top exporter of IT product, attractive opportunity advantage India, and the third largest pharma sector and a fast growing contract research agreement. India stands third globally in the number of peer-reviewed science engineering publications. Then PPP has helped in promoting exchange of scientific knowledge and R&D. Amendments to the Patent Act 1970 to make TRIPS compliant and adoption of science, technology, and innovation policy in 2013. Then you have a rising private activity, that is establishment of COE in various sectors of industries in PPP basis, or increased investment by private players, that is setting up the R&D centers. So these are the advantage of India. Whether you take waste, whether you take food, whether you take research, okay, all that thing, even though our population is in a high number, this is in fact a blessing to us, and we can use it in narrow sense. Now, let us go back to India about 40 years back, about 4 decades back. We find that the 4 decades back, how was our breathing? How was the air which we are breathing? And how is our emissions have checked in? That itself will indicate us that how we have been polluting our air. For example, the city of Jalandhar before and after. This is the city which you can see the mountain ranges, Himalayan ranges. This is the city without which we cannot see. This is India Gate. See how beautiful it is looking. This is Rashtrapati Bhavan. See here how good it looks. And this is the situation of 2020. This is the situation of 2019, where permissible matter is 2.5. Now, you know that what is this? This is a figure before lockdown. Before lockdown. This is a figure after lockdown of Corona, where the all logistic, everything was stopped. And for 1 year, 6 to 7 months, the pollution level had decreased in such a way that the beautiful city could be seen. See the clarity of India Gate. Otherwise, the same season, the clarity was different. See the 2019, the hot rising temperatures. Here you could find the no rising temperature was there. And here the view of Rashtrapati Bhavan, that is before and after. Okay, so we stop here.
Okay, sir.
Huh? Yeah, we'll stop here, I think.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, then why we will see sometime later. I will
Sir, just a minute.
come on. Okay.
Uh, so on the behalf of HRDC, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, and all the participants of this FIP program, I express my deeply thanks to you, sir, and thank you so much for delivering such a nice informative talk with us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. मुझे पेन ड्राइव लेना था मुझे। हाँ, और इसको क्या करना है, कैसे बंद करना है? बंद करेंगे।
नहीं
तो ये कैसे करेंगे? That
हाँ
इजेक्ट ही करना पड़ता है ये। इजेक्ट करना पड़ता है ना, इजेक्ट नहीं होता बोले मिनिमाइज नहीं हो रहा बोला।
वही उसने कुछ तो सेटिंग करके रखा होगा, फिर से प्रॉब्लम आ जाएगा नेक्स्ट लेक्चर।
करेक्ट।
ये खोल लेंगे।
हाँ सर हो गया सर, चल यहाँ पे। हाँ